Auzubillahiminashaitanirrajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I'm thankful of ICAN. They have approached me that they want to share my presentation, which I have presented in ICNA Shura. Dr. Nijatullah Siddiq Sahab has written one book, 21st Century Islam, Muslims and Islamic Movement. The bottom line message of this book is that Islamic movement should always be ready to think out of the box. So they should have more innovative ideas how to execute their plan. They should have more openness among themselves. They should have culture of critical thinking. They should have culture of constant ongoing review of their policies and procedures and the roadmap. This is very important because all this is becoming very alien in the culture of Islamic movement. And remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed us in the driver's seat of this work of His deen. This is an honor, this is a privilege, but at the same time, it's a big responsibility. We need to ensure that every step of this journey, we remain vigilant, open to new ideas, and mindful of our responsibilities. We will all be answerable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for our efforts we put forth. I will conclude my presentation with one saying of Maulana Amin Ahsan Islahi. He says, it's better for you to stand still facing the right direction than running towards the wrong direction. Wallahi, it's a jam. There are so many lessons from this one phrase. And let me repeat, it's better for you to stand still facing the right and correct direction than running towards the wrong direction. I hope you will all try to take some tips from this presentation, inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Today I want to share with you a presentation that I did in Islamic Circle of North America, ICNA Shura. Actually, this presentation I have prepared after discussion with many known Islamic movement scholars. And after I have gone through the current literature, which updates us about the future of Islamic movement, keeping our history in mind. And of course, no statement is absolute statement in this presentation. This is food for thought. And also this presentation will show us avenues to navigate our pathway depending on the scope and challenges we face. Until unless we will understand, the scope, the potential we have, the vision and the mission we have, and also the challenges we are going to face down the road, we will not be able to benefit from this presentation that much. And we have to also understand that diversity always brings more beauty in the movement, in any organization. And we have to get over with this cancel culture. We have to make sure that we shake hands with everybody who is like-minded or who at least thinks the way we think, and who could be beneficial for our journey on this path. The first slide which I will share with you, it says no single organization can accomplish everything. This is an era of specialization. We have to understand no single organization can achieve everything. And we have to make sure we create some kind of working relationship with many different organizations. Maulana Maududi Rahmatullah Alayhi has said at one point, we are not like a shopkeeper. This is my shop and I don't want anybody else to open shop in competition with me. Rather, it's a job of every Muslim that what we are doing through Islamic movement. The difference between Sahaba and us is Sahaba, their eyes were focused on the mission and the goal of the movement, and they wanted to get the job done. Doesn't matter, it happens through me or somebody else. Our problem is that I have seen, that I have worked with many movements, that every organization wants credit for everything. They want to be acknowledged. They want to be recognized. And they want actually only them to be recognized and acknowledged and should be given credit. Rather, sharing credit, sharing the acknowledgement, sharing the recognition, that will help. So we have to create, some kind of working relationship with many people, many organizations in this journey if we want to be successful, and flourish. Understanding of our surrounding. History has told us that we failed many times just because we did not know the dynamics of our surroundings. You have to understand what is going around. You cannot live in your bubble. You cannot live in isolation. Our experience in Egypt, our experience in Tunisia, our experience in Algeria, our experience in Pakistan, many other countries has shown that we failed to understand the circumstances, the dynamics of our surrounding. So this is very important that we should understand the surroundings, the situation, the dynamics and rules of engagement. This is constantly evolving, changing the dynamics of the world. In the time of Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi, it was a totally different ball game. Different circumstances, dynamics were different. After globalization, after Arab Spring, and after so many changes since then, things and dynamics of the world has changed. So we have to understand who our enemy is, what their tactics are, what their tools are. I remember the saying of Imam Shamil when he was captured from Chechnya and they were taking him as a prisoner of war. When he saw the train, the steam engine, he pointed towards that. This is what has defeated us, means technology has defeated us. So understanding of dynamics is very important for the future prospects and the future success and for the maintenance of that success. From slogans to substance, I have seen in most of our work, we have slogans, we have emotions, but we don't have substance. And we fail to produce when time comes. We are emotional, we have, big claims, and we say we can do this and we can do that, but when it comes end of the day to deliver what you have said, we fail to deliver because we don't have enough homework done. So we don't have substance in what we are claiming and what we are planning to do. So it is very important that with slogans and emotions, we have to have substance so that we can deliver when time comes for delivery. Adopting all available and necessary tools and means. Adopting all the tools and means available, and then you rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Ibn Qayyim rahmatullah alayh, Maulana Manazir Hasan Gilani rahmatullah alayh, they have collected, all the steps and means Prophet ﷺ adopted before he raised his hands in the Battle of Badr. So they say it was around 20 to 22 different means and tools available at that time that he has adopted, he has acquired, he has done hujjah, itmam hujjat, he did his part, and then he raised his hand in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as an Islamic movement, we have to understand this principle that whatever tools and means are available, we should do our best to adopt before we make any move. Preparing for tomorrow. Islamic movement is not just to answer the questions of today, but their eyes are on future. That's why it's a very common phrase. People say Maulana Maududi was not the man of his generation. Rather, he was thinking of generation coming. So this is the mindset and approach of Islamic movement, that they should look for future. So not only addressing the challenges of today, focusing what's coming up in the future. But I can tell you, people have analyzed the status of Islamic movements today all around the world, that most of the Islamic movements are still living in 80s. Means they are 40 years behind at least means they are behind by one generation. So there is a gap of 40 years, one generation that they have to overcome to make themselves up to date, and then looking for future and challenges of future. It's another journey that they have to finish. So really it's a very alarming that if you look at our mindset, if you look at our preparation, if you look at our resources, if you look at our discussions, topic of discussion, that what are our priorities when we have our meetings, it reflects the maturity, how mature we are. So our maturity, our resources, our preparation, our mindset, our topics of discussion, they reflect how prepared we are. And unfortunately, we are at least one generation behind, 40 years behind from our time. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us. The next slide I have is the title is Beyond Charity. Our primary objective is to establish Deen through the development of better society focused on human development and character building. The Islamic movement is not merely a charity organization. While we should engage in charitable work, this should not define our identity. Very important. It is very important to do charity work, but this should not be the only identity. This should not be the only introduction we have, in the community. Overcoming, our obstacles. The generation who is leading Islamic movement these days all around the world, I see fear, I see insecurity and protectiveness, this mindset everywhere. We are worried that somebody will come and they will take over. They might, put us off track. So this protectiveness, insecurity and fear, I have found that this is a problem of generation, our generation. Future generation might overcome this problem very easily. वो जो उर्दू में कहते हैं ना एहतियात, this ehtiyat and safe path, take safe path. Don't put yourself in any kind of risk. This mindset really is the biggest obstacle in our growth and prosperity. That we just want to stay in our comfort zone, in our bubble, and we want to make sure that how we can protect our legacy of the past. It is very important to protect the legacy of the past, but if that legacy and that protection, that protectiveness and fear and insecurity mindset, it becomes a shackles for us, chains for us, burden of our shoulder, then we rather should investigate. We should reflect and think about how we can make ourselves lighter so we can move forward to face the challenges of the futures. We have to come out of this mindset of fear, insecurity and protectiveness if we want to see a better future for Islamic movement. And for that we need to really embrace the culture of constructive criticism. This is one thing that I have seen, that in Islamic movement we don't have any mechanism of self-criticism. From our own circles, people can do a critical analysis of our work, our past decisions, our past history. Because if we set a pathway that our own people will be encouraged to do a critical analysis of our past decisions, our past history, that will be unbiased criticism, as compared to somebody who is biased out of our ranks and will do the criticism. But we don't allow, not many, especially Islamic movements from back home, Pakistan, India or United States, we don't have that culture yet. In Ikhwan, you can see to some extent they have this culture, but not where they should be. But in our ranks, we don't have that culture of, revisiting our decisions, revisiting, our past history and making sure that we learn our lesson so we will not repeat those mistakes again. That can only happen if we allow criticism, critical analysis, and reviewing our decisions and history and pathways of the past by our own people, or even like-minded people who have sympathy, but they are not in our rank, they are outside, but they can see sometimes better angle of things than we who are in the movement. We should listen and encourage them to help us out, as well. Another thing which I want to highlight here, and it's very difficult for me to share with you because I love Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi rahmatullah alayh, because he is our Muhsin. In current time and age, Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi is our Muhsin because he has shown us the roadmap, the path. But we sometimes tend to be very protective of Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi rahmatullah alayh. We don't allow anybody to say anything against. We don't allow people to be critique Sayyid Abdullah Maududi's work. But this is a very unhealthy sign which I have realized over the period of time, that we should allow people. Dynamics of the world have changed. It's a new world, different world. The language that people can understand is different. We have to adopt the language of today. That was the unique edge of Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi, that he was able to speak the language of his time. That's why he was able to communicate to educated people, to intellectual pupils. So we should allow from our ranks and also from outside, if they want to have opinion. Maulana Maududi, at the end, he was also a human being. So, having different opinion than what he said, or adding things than what he said, with full respect, with due respect, that culture should not be stopped, rather encouraged. We should not shut our doors on people who are critical about Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi or his work. Rather, we should listen to them and decide on merit whether the point the brother is saying or sister is saying has a value and weight to consider while we are following the direction given by Sayyid Abul Ala Maududi rahmatullah alayh. Next slide that I have is bridging the intellectual gap. This is a very, very important slide. There are two types of gap that I'm talking here. One is that if you look at Muslim leadership today, imams and shuyukh in general of masajid, and educated community, intellectuals of the community, the gap is increasing, especially in Indo-Pakistan and in most of the world. We see that gap is increasing. What Imam is saying, what Sheikh is saying, is not making sense to a common educated intellectual person. That's what I said. Maulana Maududi, his work was popular because he was able to speak the language of his time. That you can communicate, that common educated person, intellectual, can understand your point very clearly and it can make sense to him. That gap is increasing. The second gap, which is more alarming for the worker of Islamic movement, is that the gap between, in many places of the world I have seen, when this new generation is getting more Islamic knowledge, that the gap between the Islamic leadership and Islamic movement worker, that gap of knowledge and intellect is also increasing. That we are not able to keep up as a worker of Islamic movement with the required knowledge, tools and skills needed in this work of dawah, in the work of tahreek, in the work of the movement, in the work of iqamat ad-deen. We are lacking and we are way behind. So that gap is creating problem already, and it will create more problem in the future. So the solution is that we should think out of the box so that we can develop and nurture human resource of Islamic scholars so they can speak the language of today. We should have seminaries. We should have education institutions, not like typical conventional madrasa education. Education which can give them not only typical madrasa education, but also education which can equip them with the current knowledge, current requirements, community, how they think, so they can understand the dynamics, so they can speak the language of today to educate our youth, to educate our educated community, and to educate our intellectuals, so that we can win their hearts. Not by suppressing their views, not just giving one-way delivery, this is the verdict, rather making sense in everything we say. And that is the way that Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, has taught us, and that is the way throughout the history. Whenever Muslims have flourished, or whenever any community has flourished, way is that you want to make sure that your leadership and your educated and intellectual community can engage at the same wavelength. Finding balance. As a worker of Islamic movement, you have to understand, we have 4 avenues, 4 titles that we have to work on, 4 goals that we have set for us. One is our personal tazkiyah. Second is community development. Third is social and civic engagement. And fourth is influencing directly or indirectly policies and policy makers. That last part, influencing policy and policy makers, that is, election process, participating directly or indirectly. But before that, there are 3 steps. And Maulana Maududi Rahmatullah Alayhi has said that until and unless you will not work in all these 4 areas together, you will not be able to accomplish anything. You cannot suspend and pass one and work on the next. Rather, it's a sequence that you have to work on yourself, develop yourself, then community development, your family development, engaging people, then social and civic engagement at larger level, and then influencing policy and policy makers, all 4 areas. So there should be a balance in all these 4. Imagine if we had worked last 80 years, since 1941, if we had invested in all these 4 areas together, our position would have been very different than where we are today. And that's why it is said, Islamic movement can rule nations without having a state if they had worked in all these 4 areas together. I'm not saying that Hukumat-e-Ilahiyya is not our ultimate goal. It is. But it has to be achieved when we are working in all these 4 areas. Otherwise, even if you achieve that goal of Hukumat-e-Ilahiyya, you will not be able to sustain it. And this is what exactly has happened. The sequence of slides I have shown you. You can go on ladder and reach to the state, but you cannot keep yourself there for very long. Somebody is going to pull your leg down, and then you work again 100 years, and then you climb that ladder again, and then you reach to the final step, and then somebody will, and this game will continue until and unless we have very strong foundation from bottom. That can only happen if we work in all these 4 areas, that we have done our work in communities. We have raised the community to the level, no matter what happens, they will not leave you. And we have some examples in the world. We have some examples in the world that people have given their trust to some groups, and those groups have invested really in these communities, and no matter what situation arises, but they are not giving up on these brothers and sisters because of the trust, because of the investment they have done in them to grow the community. So that is very important, that we have to understand that we sometime in rush, in hesitation, we want to achieve the top level, state, but there is no groundwork, there is no substance, there is no preparation, there is no homework, until unless, this is the Maulana Maududi philosophy, that until unless you go from ground up, you will not be able to succeed. And even if you succeed, that success will be very temporary. That's why I say finding a balance, working in all these 4 areas. As I said, analyzing our growth. Look how much investment we have done in last 80 years. Human resource, financial resource, lives of people. How much we have invested. Yes, we can count many impacts that we are able to create all around the world. But wallahi, the solid impact that you and me, we can build solid impact that we can materialize, we can really rely on, hard to find. Only reason is that we have not done our critical analysis, that whatever, most of the time we just work in dark, throwing arrow in dark. We get up in the morning, do a routine work, finish, month is gone, year is gone, one leadership comes, next leadership comes, same routine, same hours, same mindset, same approach. If you will follow the same path, nothing is going to change. My brothers and my sisters, we have to, this is the hikmah. Dr. Nijatullah Siddiqui rahmatullah alayh and Dr. Shanqiti in his book, they have written, hikmah of today's time is that you achieve maximum results with minimum resources. Maximum results with minimum resources. Our equation is totally different. We are investing maximum resources but getting minimum results out of that. So this equation need to be changed, and that is the hikmah of today, my brothers and my sisters. And this is said by many scholars that if you are not able to get any breakthrough after 40 years of your work, some say between 25 to 40 years, then you have to refresh, you have to rebrand your message. If you will try to sell the same message without refreshing it, refreshing through new generation, through new leadership, through new ideas, through new slogans, or rebranding through new ideas, new leadership, fresh ideas, you will not be able to make a big impact in the society. So refreshing and rebranding, if you fail to get any real breakthrough in your work, it's the need of the time, need of the hour, my brothers and my sisters. So in conclusion, I will say every slide I have shared with you has history, has data that I can share inshallah sometime then when I have time, but our history speaks for itself, that many times we fail to produce results because we are not aware of our dynamics, because our homework was not there, because we have adopted artificial pathways, not the natural growth that we go from bottom to top. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help us to revive our message, to refresh our message, rebrand our message, to understand the dynamics of today so that we can plan for a better future for Islamic movement. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.